Welcome again. In this video, we are going to be looking at the basic concepts of conformity, deviance, and power. We are going to be hitting the nail straight on the head. I encourage you to pay attention as usual as I commence the presentation. Cheers.
Okay, welcome everybody again. My name is Dr. Ashibi Jacob Neji. Today we'll be looking into the topics here: conformity, deviance, and power. All right, mentioned that already. So without waste of time, let's move on straight to the intended learning outcomes of this lesson. Now, at the end of this lesson, you are expected to at least you should be able to clearly explain the term conformity. All right, again, you should explain why. You should be able to explain why and when people conform. All right, why and when people conform. Again, you should be able to define the term deviance. It's a key word here in this lesson, so by the end of this lesson you should be able to define that term. Additionally, you should be able to list and explain the different perspectives of deviance. There are different perspectives of deviance, so this lesson is going to be exposing you to that. The last part of this lesson it has to do with power, and so you should be able to define the term power and state and explain the forms of powers. Okay, of power. Sorry about that. Okay, those are the intended learning outcomes. Let's move on straight to see what the term conformity means. What is the meaning of conformity? Conformity simply means behaviors that are in consonance, in agreement, all right, with established norms of a group or society. So those expected behaviors, once an individual agrees or begin to exhibit those expected behaviors in a group or society, that individual is best described as as a conformist. All right, someone who is conforming to the society or group norms. Okay. All right. Of course, norms will actually state what individuals should do and what they should not do. So the act of obeying or agreeing or practicing those established norms is what is known as conformity. All right. So let's move on again straight to why do people conform? What are those factors that will motivate people to conform? One is the motivation to be correct. Every individual, especially when a set price is known, every individual wants to be correct, and so that is a driving force for them to conform to the norms of a group or society. The simple image here shows you of a leader right in front, okay, then others are following straight behind, following those footprints. You can see them right there in the same queue. All right, they are conforming in that order of queue. All right, another factor is the motivation to be like others. All right, motivation to be like other members of the group. If there are members of the group who carry themselves with so much prestige and dignity, especially the leaders of the group, the followers or others are actually motivated to be like them, and so in order to be like them, they tend to conform to the norms of that group or society. All right, the last one here is the dispensation of punishment according to the norms. Now, rule breakers, violators of the norms, are usually punished. All right, so that punishment, in order to avoid that punishment, members of the group or society tends to conform to the norms. They do not want to become rule or norms breakers. All right, so in order to avoid this punishment, the best course of action is to conform to the norms or the rules of that group. All right, so we have now been able to explain why, the why. All right, why do people conform? Now let's now see when people conform. When are they likely to conform? All right, so the when do people conform? Alternatively, or in other words, factors that influences conformity. The first one is ambiguity. All right, ambiguity, where the rules are not so clear. Okay, people tend to dig deep to find out what exactly the specifics of that rule in order to conform. So that situation of lack of clarity pushes people to begin to find out the details of such rules for them to conform. All right, unanimity and group size. Whenever the group size is a larger proportion of the group size is in agreement with the norms, is in conformity with the norms, the other people, the few majority tends to also try to conform. Alright, at that situation, they conform to the norms. Now, personal characteristics, familiarity with the task, social status, group attraction are all factors that also influences people to conform. When people are not familiar with the task, okay, they tend to find out, just like we have here in ambiguity, they tend to find out details about the task, and at that point they tend to conform to the task. Social status, research has proven that those at the lower cadre of stratification are the ones that actually conform. So at the lower level of stratification, individuals tends to conform to rules. Then group attraction, if the group is very attractive, all right, if the activities in the group are attractive, members tend to conform, and people tend to conform in order to remain members of that group. Now, personal interest of being liked, this is a self-motivating factor, right, where people tend to perform to be in total conformity of the group norms in order to be liked by members of the society. This is also a good situation when people tends to conform. Alright, so we are done with the term conformity, as brief as that. Now let's look at deviance. Deviance, what is deviance? There's a simple image here showing you that these ballpoint arrows are supposed to be hitting the center of that of this play ball here. Now you can see them hitting the falling outside. All right, they are falling outside. The act of not hitting the exact point is termed deviance. All right, the arrows tend to deviate and they are falling outside instead of right in here. Now, in social parlance, deviants are behaviors that violate the norms of the group or society. As simple as that. It is the direct opposite of conformity. All right, those who do not respect the norms of any society or group are deviants. All right, they are deviants. And so, in simple definition, deviants are behaviors that violate norms of the group or society. Okay, let's look at the condition for deviance. Are those conditions that will categorize an act or an action as a deviant behavior. Alright, conditions for deviance. You can see the first one here is that the act must be frequent. Alright, for an act to be called a deviant act, it must have happened more than once. Alright, it must be a frequent behavior. It must be something that can be easily predicted for it to be called a deviant behavior. 2. Violation of important rules. When important rules of it is only when important rules of a society or a group has been violated that it is termed deviance. Rules that are not really important are overlooked. Alright, so very important rules are given priority. This is similar to the fact that the rules must also be of serious concern. Okay, for those rules to be important, that means they are of serious concern. So it is the violation of such rules that those acts of violation can be classified as deviant acts. Alright, so that's it. Let's look at the perspectives of deviance. We'll take the first one of Cesare Lombroso. Alright, Cesare Lombroso is an Italian criminologist. He's recognized as the father of modern criminology. He actually postulated or is a major proponent of the positivist school of criminology. Alright, he initiated the idea of the born criminal, and his idea is more of the biological perspective of the genetical makeup of individuals. Okay, this perspective is more of what he of his investigation, of his studies on criminals, and he came up with the conclusion that criminals shares common characteristics. Okay, and by measuring their body or examining their body features, for instance, he said the criminals have slopy forehead, ears of unusual sizes, excessive length of arms, etc. Okay, so to him, criminals are born. Right, there are born criminals. So to become a criminal is actually a trait that is being inherited. All right, which is genetically passed on to individuals. Okay, so that's the biological perspective of Lombroso to on deviance. All right, for people to deviate, that most deviants actually inherited the act. Okay, let's look into the social perspective. The social perspective. On social perspective, we have the likes of Edwin Sutherland in the differential association theory, where the thesis is that deviance is a product of association through interaction with others. Where there's an existence of subcultural groups, for instance, a gang. All right, anyone that associates with these gang members and interact with them quite often is likely going to be a deviant. All right, it's likely going to be a deviant. So according to Sutherland, that the interaction with criminals is likely going to make one a criminal. Okay, so deviant behaviors are actually learned by interaction with deviants. Okay, now the third perspective is the labeling perspective. How Howard Baker is in the at the middle of this, where he termed labeling as the process of classifying someone as a deviant. All right, where all fingers point to that person as a deviant. All right, so that's labeling. That the first act of deviant, the first attempt to commit a deviant act, is termed the primary deviance. After that attempt, where everybody has quickly predicted that this individual is likely going to commit that offense, and of course the individual did not disappoint by committing that offense, the second act is called secondary deviance. All right, the second attempt of that act is called secondary deviance, and that labeling actually pushes individuals to become deviants because, for instance, a child who takes drugs suddenly stops, but the society has already labeled that child as a drug addict, and even when the child has stopped, everybody still sees that child as a drug addict. The child can actually say, to hell with society, I will go ahead and continue in my drug deals. Okay, already I am known to be a drug addict, so why stop? I'll go ahead with it. Right, so that's the effect of labeling. Okay, before we proceed, let's take our first class activity. Okay, just pause the video, take down all of these questions, and ensure you answer them correctly on your own. All right, on your own, just to be sure that you are getting a good grasp of the lesson so far. All right, so let's move on to the next aspect of this lesson, which is power. All right, we're looking at power right now. What is power? Power is the ability to ensure compliance despite individuals' resistance, compelling others to do what they would otherwise not do. What they would otherwise not do. For instance, this individual here originally may not want to tow this direction, but then someone has been able to influence that individual to tow that direction. That is a clear demonstration of power. Okay, so it is the ability to ensure compliance despite individuals' resistance. Okay, the key words here are ability, influence, complex, force, compel, force, etc. These are keywords. You may also want to look at Lege's definition. All right, Lege's definition is all encompassing. Check that out for yourself to broaden your knowledge about the concept of power. Okay, let's look at the sources of power. Where do we get? Before that, let's look at forms of power. What are the forms of power? The first form of power is physical power. Physical power, and that form of power, according to Handy in 1985, is the use of physical force to achieve influence. All right, the use of physical force to achieve influence. For instance, you can see this great guy here kicking the other one out of the way, out of the door. All right, using physical strength. Okay, or physical force. Alright, so let's move on to the next form of power. Resource power, as the name implies, the owner of resources are usually powerful people. So it is the possession and use of valued resources to achieve influence. Those who possess resources usually influences others. Okay. Examples: control over salary. Where the boss controls your salary is likely going to have power over you. Promotion, food, materials, and all of that, etc., can actually give one power over others. Then let's look at position power. Position power, as you can see here, there's a big guy here who is influencing this other person by virtue of his position. So position power is derived from one's office or position of authority. An example is the power to allocate work, assess performance, etc., and even promote. All right. So by virtue of one's office or position of authority, this form of power is usually found in administrative settings. Alright, now let's take our class activity 2, which is a brief one, and I'm sure you'll be able to do that. So pause the video again, copy this class activity out, and attempt it religiously to be sure that you actually understand the lesson. Alright, thanks again for watching. If you have questions or contributions, feel free, send them across to me, and I will be exceedingly happy to respond to them. Bye for now.